Welcome to the One Big Thing podcast. I'm Steve Campbell. Very excited about this one today. Got my friend Meg Jacoby on. I'm going to just tell you right here at the beginning that when I tell Meg, hey, what do people need to know about you that they don't know? She kind of undersells herself. So right at the beginning, I cleared up in the episode. Meg is a beast. She's incredible. She is the Hyrox World Champion. She's a record setter. Hyrox is very similar to a CrossFit. Meg is going to talk about her story in which she pushed herself to the limit being a D1 college athlete and found this passion in weight training, lifting, and running when a friend introduced her to Hyrox, and she has quickly catapulted to becoming one of the top athletes in the world, setting records. But she's also a single mom, and she's got a daughter 10 years old, and we get into it in this episode. So just a little bit of framework for you today. We got Meg Jacoby, Hyrox champion. She's going to share with you everything from what this journey has been like getting into Hyrox, lessons learned along the way, as well as maybe you might have in your life like Meg did. When you are pushing yourself to cast a vision, whether it's in business or in fitness, or you're just banking on yourself and investing in yourself, there are going to be people in your life, regardless of how close they are to you, that just don't understand. And they may not be so overtly out in your face and saying, hey, I don't believe in you, but it's a subtleness. The questions that they ask, are you sure this is what you want to do? Do you have people in your life that are championing you? So Meg and I not only talk about fitness, but we talk about maybe relationships and how to look at them. And how do you even begin to maybe separate yourself from people that aren't serving the vision that's on your life, but do it in a healthy, respectful way? So we cover a whole lot of things in this episode. You're going to leave with some real takeaways, learning about mindsets and how you can push yourself. And I think the real thing that I took away from this episode is Meg shares this journey in Hyrox didn't start until she was 30 years old. What story are you writing for your life? And even if you feel stuck or you feel like this is the longest season of your life, can you use Meg's story as an inspiration to show you that you never know what might be coming around the next turn in your life? As you're going to hear from Meg, she put herself in position through physical fitness training and was introduced in Hyrox, which has now launched her into superstardom in many ways. What is it that you need to do in your life to position yourself to live the life that you're meant to live? So as always, thanks for being my guest on the One Big Thing podcast, and enjoy this episode with Meg Jacoby. Well, welcome back to the One Big Thing. Steve Campbell here with you. If you're watching on YouTube and you're like, hey, I've never seen you wear a backwards trucker hat, this is actually a very special episode today, as I have Meg Jacoby on with me. Meg was a referral from a good friend who were both into health and fitness as men and dads. And he said, hey, you got to have Meg Jacoby on. She is just a phenomenal athlete and doing incredible things on a world scale. And so I'm super excited to get into this conversation today. And when I work out in the gym in the morning, I throw a backwards hat on. And so I thought for this one today, to get into the right mode, to get into the right mindset, and to honor Meg, why not get into the full scale, role of Steve, the lifter. But for those that are here to celebrate Meg, welcome to the One Big Thing. This is an interview style show where, my heart was to really encourage people in their 30s and 40s that are going through maybe challenging or difficult seasons of life. There may be a lot of good, but then there's also a lot of things that are confusing or don't quite make sense. I wanted to bring guests from all walks of life, obviously, if you know Meg, but I've had NFL athletes, people from Peloton, musicians, and it's just been a very cool opportunity for me to say, like, what is behind everything that you do that maybe could be insecurities or things you're dealing with that can humanize all of us. And I serve as the chief brand officer at my business, so protecting brands, telling stories at the heart of what I do. But as a dad, married with 4 young kids under 8 years old, I'm in the thick of the seasons of life that many of my listeners are. And so just honored when anybody is willing to take 30, 40 minutes, however long it takes to get through part of what's on their mind and what they're working on. And so when Meg, who I know is traveling all over, made time for me today, I just wanted to make sure that I honor her time. So Meg, welcome to the One Big Thing. For those that don't know you though, or what you're working on, what are maybe some things right here at the beginning you think would be helpful for any new listener that's never heard of you before?
About myself,
Yeah.
I'm just a kind of a small town girl that
Living in a lonely world.
yeah, great song. Yeah, just I was an athlete my whole life, and I went through some hard times in my 20s and kind of just leaned into the things that empowered me the most, and it ended up turning into my full-time career. So I became a professional athlete in my early 30s. Very unexpected. Not a typical track, I would say, for athletes in general. But yeah, just self-belief and, overcoming obstacles is what has really kind of gotten me where I
Yeah.
am.
Well, Meg, I'm going to have to sell the sizzle then, because it's not just like you're just an athlete that's playing flag football on the weekends, or Uncle Rico who thinks he still has it. You are, for those that don't know, the Hyrox World Champion, and you've been a world record setter. And from what I've kind of understood from the outside, I've lifted my entire life. Hyrox is very similar to like a CrossFit Games, where it's high intensity
Hmm.
workouts. You're competing with athletes all over the world. So you're
Yep.
not just like this person that was in accounting and then, decided at 30 to just go run a marathon. I mean, you are literally the world champion in high rock. So, when we say sports and athletes, it's a kind of a different level. But I think that's what's so cool about connecting with you, because from what I kind of learned about you, you grew up in the southern tier of New York. Did I
Yeah.
hear that you went to Maine and well?
Yes.
So I'm a Vestal
Yes.
grad. I'm
Yeah.
living down here in Knoxville, Tennessee now, moved my family through COVID. So a lot of people have realigned through as the world has changed. But
Yeah.
anytime you can get somebody from the 607 area code that is doing incredible stuff, you want to try to reconnect with them. So talk to us then about that journey. You said you got into High Rocks, and if I butchered High Rocks or you need to explain it anymore, please go into it. But you were doing something, and it wasn't until you were 30 that you kind of got into this. So
Yeah.
what were you doing before 30, and then what in the world happens where you're just like, I can just go compete at a world scale?
Yeah. Um, so I've been a runner my whole life. I was a Division 1 runner at UConn,
Okay.
out of high school, and just always into sports and fitness. And I started lifting when I was 15, and that was kind of not typical at the time. So in my 20s, I had my daughter when I was 23. I became a single parent at 25, and I just really started to kind of like lean back into that competitive side of myself. I started running with a local group here. I started getting back into road racing. I started running pretty awesome times, some of my fastest times ever in my late 20s. COVID happened, kind of shut all of the racing down. I was training for my first full marathon when, everything shut down and then all the races were getting canceled. So when the gyms opened back up during COVID, I just went full bore into the lifting side, the strength side. I started doing some powerlifting. I started doing some CrossFit, and I got really strong in a few years. And then basically a friend had told me about this event called Hyrox that combined the running and the strength side. And it was just something that my body just adapted to super well, the type of training that was needed for it. I'm a very high volume person. I'm working out multiple times a day. And I was then. I was like running in the morning for an hour and then going and lifting for 90 minutes in the afternoon, or in my garage gym because I have a daughter, obviously. So it was just something I found. In my first race, I qualified for the like elite 15, they call it. It's the top 15 best people in the whole world that get to compete on the biggest stage. So my first race, brand new, I had already made it into that elite group. And in my second race, 4 weeks later, I ended up actually breaking the women's pro world record. So I set my first world record within 4 weeks of doing my first event. So it was just one of those things that obviously it was many, many, many years of buildup in training and working out and all of those things that had developed the skill set that I needed to find this and have success in it right away. But um, it's also just kind of the mindset behind it. When I had done it my first time, I said, okay, this was so fun. I loved this. I loved the challenge. And like, I'm an all in person. So it was,
Yep.
okay, I'm all in now. I'm always kind of all in, but then when you really find a passion for something, then it's like, okay, now I want to like do everything I can to, see where I can take this. And I just had this feeling instinctually that this is something I should follow and that could change my life. And I really believed that very quickly. And I'm glad I did, because in the last year, the sport in general has grown to, it's actually surpassed CrossFit
Wow.
now, and the amount of participants is higher than CrossFit's ever seen, and it's a much newer sport. So the growth of it in the last 2 years since I've been involved has been incredible, and that's also helped open a lot of doors for me with my career in this.
What a trajectory, right?
Yeah,
You're
it
just
was not anticipated.
a Yukon
So
Husky, just
yeah.
running, and then you just decide, someone introduces you something, you just show up a couple weeks later and set a world record. And from what I've seen from the videos on Hyrox, it's a lot of sled pulls, it's a lot of rowing, it's a lot of
Hmm.
push-ups, pull-ups, high intensity, type training that you kind of, went into. So incredible for you that you set this world record, but had spent years kind of training. I guess my question is, even backing up, what were you
Hmm.
doing? Were you just full time? I'm going to get into high rocks training. Did you have like a 9 to 5? Were
Oh
you
yeah, I worked
waiting
for Lockheed
table?
Martin.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, like that seemed like
So
the natural path
yeah.
to, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, totally. I went from like being a desk person in like an engineering field to being a professional athlete. No, so yeah, I was working for Lockheed full time, and I was also actually still coaching. I coached cross country and track at Maine Endwell for 6 years. So my first like couple races that I'd ever done in Hyrox, I was actually working two jobs. So I was waking up at like 4 a.m. training. I was buying like as much equipment as I could off of Facebook Marketplace. Like if anyone was selling something from COVID, I was like trying to buy as much, like a treadmill and sandbags and all the equipment that I could, as much as I could. Because I knew, especially as a mom, my time was so limited. If I could do as much at home as possible, that would be the most ideal. And it was a lot of sacrifice from I would say my daughter sacrificed a lot. And it was time with me, and it was also coming to the gym with me. There were nights where I was like, Mila, I have to go to the gym for 1 hour. Like, you have to come with me. I'm lucky I had a gym that allowed that. And it like she didn't go to a daycare. She like hung out with me, and a lot of great things I think come from that. Your kids seeing you active and working out and pushing yourself, but also like, she was 7, 8 years old. Like, this is the last thing she wants to do after school is like come to the gym with her mom. But it was also having conversations about why I'm doing this. Like I'm like, hey, I believe that I can do something really special with this, and I want to give it my all, and that's what you have to do. And she's been a huge supporter of mine. So she's my number one cheerleader.
Well, it's awesome that you're a mom, and then you went on to set your best times ever. And I'm just thinking about a few things, folks. Can we just all be thankful that we've evolved from Craigslist to Facebook Marketplace?
Yeah,
The fear of
seriously.
murder within Craigslist was absolutely sky high for quite a
Yeah.
while. So at least Facebook is a little bit more attainable. And hey, I have no idea how many Lockheed Martin listeners listen to this podcast, but if you look to your right or left, you never know. You could be sitting next to a world record setter at Lockheed today.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's what's so cool is, what I've learned, doing 40 plus episodes and again, talking to people from all over, the idea of like my break, like when's the break going to come? Because I
Hmm.
think we're all secretly searching for a spark or something that can maybe make the mundane of life, even raising kids, truthfully, just kind of
Hmm.
break it up. And when you're at Lockheed, wasn't like, and maybe I'm wrong, that you set out and said, I'm going to go do this thing to compete at this level, but you put yourself in position to push yourself physically. And that's when you got introduced to High Rocks. And
Yes.
so I think so many people are trying to circumvent that first step and figure it all out while they're still raising kids and while they're married or while they're working a job. And it's just too hard to do. So, I mean,
Hmm.
kudos to you that you put in the time and you put in the sacrifice. I think that's helpful for individuals that are maybe out there wanting to push themselves today. But I love the idea that you were a mom first, you had a child, your daughter was growing with you and going through that. So it wasn't like, I think sometimes as people, when you bring kids into the world, you do give up a lot and you sacrifice as a parent, but it doesn't mean your life is over or on hold. And I think when you do have kids and you see, somebody like yourself doing something, the assumption is, well, she must not have kids or the responsibilities that I have. What has been that process? Because I know you've competed against other moms within Hyrox.
Yeah.
What's that community been like? Obviously, the most elite of elite athletes, but have you also found that as you've gotten into this world of training, that you're just your network of other people and encouraging them, and they might not be a Hyrox, competitor, but like, how has this just expanded your reach just with everyday people?
Oh, I think it's incredible to be somebody who others view as inspiring. Um, I think that's been one of the coolest parts of this journey is I get so many messages and DMs and comments and about, you're my hero or you're my idol or like I would love, I look so up to you and all that. And it's like I take that really seriously. In the way I carry myself, in the way I speak, in the way I post, because that's a really special position to be for somebody. And
Yeah.
I grew up having those people that I emulated, right? And I think, um, I don't want to ever let it's like, I don't want to let people down. Of course, I don't think I would, but it's like, I really take that as a serious thing because I'm impacting someone's life in a positive way. And that means a lot. That means a lot to them. So it means a lot to me. And I try to answer every single message. If I, win a race or I get a bunch of messages, I try to answer every single one because someone took time out of their life and day to congratulate me. And that means a lot. And it means a lot to people. So I think that's probably been the coolest part of the journey is just getting to like help inspire other moms, other parents, other women. Because when people hear my real story where, I've been a single parent for 10 years, my daughter's almost 10. Um, this isn't a typical trajectory for somebody in that position. And so to be someone who can show, hey, like you can get through anything, if you are willing to do the work, you can do anything truly. And I think we tell our kids that, right? We always tell them like you can be anything you want to be in life, but I think often I wonder, are we actually living proof of that? And that's
Yeah.
something that I'm really passionate about, that I get to be the living proof for my daughter that you really can aspire to be anything that you want. It's never going to be easy. And she's watched me fail many times, and she's watched me cry in the garage and be so sick of the training or feeling beat down and run down. Like she's seen all of it. So she is getting firsthand witness of also what it takes, because it's, nothing is ever handed to you. So I think that's really important. I try to be super authentic with my story because I do want that to resonate with people,
Sure.
because no one's life is perfect. And if you haven't gone through hard times, you're going to at some point, because it doesn't skip anyone. We can't avoid things happen in life, and it's not always great, so we have to roll with the punches sometimes and adapt and overcome. And I think going through a lot of that early on in my life has also made me the strong woman that I am now. And I don't regret anything. I would never take anything back because it's all kind of led me exactly here. And having the mindset that I have has also led me here, and those things contribute to that. So, yeah.
Well, and you are such an inspiration because some guests I have on I'm very close with. I knew in a past life, and it's just like, hey, you want to come back on and bring life full circle. With some people, especially when they're referred to you, I like to do my homework. I like to make sure that I'm prepared and I understand what's happened to them in their life. And I think what was very cool about kind of just looking you up is where you show up. And I saw that there was an entire chat on Reddit, the Meg Jacoby chat. And I
Is
just
there
start.
really?
It's when
I
you've
hope
made
it's
it.
not, I hope
No,
it's
it
not
was
negative.
it was something to do with running. A lot of
Oh,
runners
okay.
commenting, and it was positive. But it
All
was just
right.
kind of
They're
cool
probably
to
like, she's not
see.
that fast.
No, it was kind of cool to see the thread that was happening, and I watched a couple of YouTube videos on you and saw some interviews because I always like to. also get a feel for people's disposition and personality, and like, man, are we going to connect, and how do I bring the best parts out of them and let them shine? And I think, with what I'm seeing from what you've done, I live my life vicariously through your pictures and reels, because you and your friends are so jacked. And,
Oh, thanks.
it's just like, man, the superhuman Avengers in every picture doing life. But you guys are pushing yourself and finding community with each other. And
Yeah.
what you had just kind of said in that last part is, I think, what really has resonated with me over the last, several years, as being a dad has changed me, going through COVID, just living my life and experiencing what other people have gone through, is I've never walked a day in somebody else's shoes.
Hmm.
And like you said, challenges are going to catch up to all of us regardless of who you are, but those challenges look different for every single person. And so I try to find a wide array of guests that can speak to different things that people might be dealing with. If I have a couple friend and they have a child with special needs, my kids don't have special needs.
Yeah.
I can't sit here and tell them that they should parent this way or do this, because I'm not with them every day. Or the things that you might be struggling with in your life might be mental or emotional or physical. Don't ever limit or devalue what you're going through, because it may be a different challenge than other people. And so I always try to figure out, there's so many people that, what I always say, suffer in silence and never express what is holding them back from the life they want to live. It could be a financial burden. It could be being a single parent. And so to kind of tap into, again, my world, I got Steph, my wife, and we got 4 kids, but you being a single parent and doing Hyrox and being at the stage and being a role model and wanting to give back. I mean, obviously you are giving so much of your time and space, to people that want to hear from you. But what, within, like, how do you get community yourself, and how do you push yourself? Because that's one thing with this show that I always push every guest to do. We're going to inspire a whole lot of people over 30, 40 minutes with stories that are like, that's so good, guys. But it's like, how do we also give people really practical things that you've learned through this journey that maybe someone can implement? I mean, on those days when you don't feel like going anymore, or you're
Yeah.
crying with your daughter, or you lose at a championship,
Hmm.
are there is it therapy? Is it journaling? Is it an app? Is it a way to decompress? Like, how does Meg Jacoby keep going or to get better? Has there been anything in your life that has just worked for you, or you've tried, that you think, could inspire or help somebody else?
Well, really, I think fitness has always been my therapy. And that's where I've always come, always, anytime I'm going through anything challenging, that's my go-to every time, is like, if I'm upset, I go to the gym. If I'm upset, I'm running, or I'm doing something physical, because of the mental positive side that it brings to me. It can completely change my mood. Listening to music is very therapeutic to me as well. So it's like, I always leaned into that, into the fitness, into the working out. And that it always makes me feel so much better, because that's where I'm most empowered. I feel like my strongest self, my most authentic self, is when I'm doing something physical, because it's just been such a huge part of my life since I was a child. So I've always found that even when I'm sick of training, I go train, but I'll do something different, right? Something that makes me happier, brings me joy. It's going to a CrossFit class, it's being around other people, it's meeting up with some friends and going for a run. But it does always involve fitness in some capacity, but I like to include people in that with me. That's kind of how I get my community, because life is so, when you're chasing something that's big, life can't really be balanced. There's no such thing. It's just not possible. You have to put so much of your time and energy into that thing and in that direction. And so for me, I've given up a lot of social life. I don't go out. I don't really hang out. It's very, they say it's lonely at the top, and that is so true. My circle has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. Um, and that's also been an awakening, because that's also me realizing the type of people I want to be surrounded by, the
Sure.
type of mindsets of the people that I'm surrounded by, because it all really directly impacts you, whether you realize it or not. I always say that you're the average of the 5 closest people to you. So if you're surrounding yourself with people who are negative, who aren't positive, who aren't building you up, who aren't supporting you, that also will, you will start to not support yourself over time. So I've really learned that there's certain people I want to be around. Those are the people that like doing the things that I like to do, that like to push themselves, that want to be successful. And I've put myself in rooms that I don't belong in necessarily at the time, but because I want to grow as a person, I try to surround myself with people that I really look up to in some way. And that can be someone in business or other people in the fitness industry. It's been influencers that I've met. There's so many inspiring people that this journey has brought into my life that I'm really grateful for. But yeah, it's doing the work regardless is also what builds confidence in me to keep going. And that's where I think showing up even when you don't want to, or even when it's hard, or even when you haven't slept, or even when you have a busy schedule, if you can make that time and show up for yourself, it instills so much confidence in you. And then the next time it's easier and easier and easier. And then it's just a habit and you don't miss it. Whatever that is, it could be gym, it could be spending more time with your family, whatever it is. So that's kind of what I've done, and it's just worked. And it's been years of that consistency and that mindset. And that's what instills the confidence to then be like, okay, I can do this at a high level.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in the things that you just said. So my curious question: what does Meg Jacoby listen to when you train? Is there a certain musician or genre that's like your
Oh, it could
go-to?
be anything. I'm like sometimes it's rap, sometimes it's country, sometimes it's old school, like 2000s emo. Like it just kind of depends on the workout, you
Like
know?
Blink, like
How
Blink
hard
one,
are we
like
going?
Blink 182. Hello
Even
there.
more. Yeah, a
Oh,
little bit of that. A little bit of
okay.
that.
I saw a
Yeah.
video recently that was Carson's Daily's TRL in like 2002, and I just started vibing on my phone, and I was like,
Yeah, right?
those are the
Sometimes
glory days.
throwbacks are so good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So our number ones today that we play in our car with our kids, it's like, man, I remember listening to oldies with my parents, and it's just
Yeah,
funny how
right.
that happens. As I was thinking about your five closest friends, I think first of all, I would love that my disposition in life is when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just got to go train. I would love that. I just feel like, you know what, I got to go for a run today. It's not, for me,
Yeah.
truthfully, I grew up a very heavy set kid. So I had two older brothers. Mom always had plenty of food on the table, and I just found that food was a coping mechanism for me. So
Hmm.
where you're doing power cleans and going for runs, I'm, having, Reese peanut butter cups or, whatever, because it became a place of my kids are a lot today. I can't even figure myself out. When they go to bed, I'm going to go raid the kitchen at night because somehow I feel that this food is going to help me. And I've had to constantly, I've always had the discipline being a D1 athlete myself of doing P90X over the years. Great shout out, by the way. One of my sponsors is the Shred app. If anybody is out there and you're inspired by Meg, Shred is a AI created workout app that you can have in your phone that when you show up in the gym or at home creates entire workouts for you. So if you're kind of like, I feel inspired, but I don't know what to do, Shred is a great app that somebody can check out that has really transformed the way that I train. But I'm somebody that's at the gym 4 days a week. I get up at 4:30 every morning. I go before the kids get up and I do the first part. What I struggle with in my life is there's a morning Steve and then there's an evening Steve. When I wake up in the morning and I go into the bathroom and I splash cold water on my face and I sneak out of the house, I literally feel like I can do anything in the world. There is no
Hmm.
challenge too hard. I go and I train my butt off for an hour. I take care of my body. I see the other, people that are there in the morning that are disciplined. Throughout the course of the day, I do fine. But when I get into the evening, especially, when work's done and the work really starts, being a parent with kids, the time between 5 o'clock and bedtime is sometimes a draining time where, especially with
Hmm.
four kids, you're making meals, you're getting kids to bed, that by the time you finally hit your bed at night, you're just so exhausted. And that's usually when I make bad decisions. So when I was thinking about your story, having an obvious bent towards fitness as being an outlet for you, I think when you walk and you see other people that look like you and physically in shape, you can immediately tell that fitness is a part of their life. I mean, you don't just
Hmm.
have abs and a
Yeah.
body from not taking care of yourself. So the physical aspect, I'm thinking about the person who's out there that their disposition isn't weight training. It's not running. That's the last thing that they want
Hmm.
to do. Maybe they have unhealthy ways of coping. And so with you, your community is almost a dead giveaway because you can see physically what people look
Yes.
like. And it's like, those are my people. I'm thinking about the single mom or the couple or the individual that's in their 30s and 40s that doesn't even know what they're looking for in a community. And so maybe they recognize that, okay, if I'm an average of the five people closest to me, my friends are all kind of negative. Is that not good? Like, where do my negative thoughts come from? Why am I usually a glass half empty kind of person? Or
Hmm.
when my spouse says something, I'm pessimistic about what they're going through. Any, and I know it's different because your world is physical, but as you've crossed paths with people or you've inspired people, or even the questions followers of yours have reached out to, like, how do people find, if you are an average of the top five people, how do you begin to take inventory of your own values and
Hmm.
what's important to you? So like when you see it, when you hear it, when it's evident in front of you, you're like, these are the kind of people I want to surround myself. And have you had to, because it's lonelier at the top, have you ever had to pull away from an unhealthy
Yeah.
relationship? And like, what does that look like? Is that a text? Is it I sent you a Snapchat? Like for you, what has been the healthiest way to be like, I got goals, I got to go do this
Hmm.
over here, this isn't working? If somebody does recognize that there's a relationship in their life that isn't quite working out, what has been your experience for maybe starting to pull away from somebody?
Yeah, so I've posted about this a lot actually, because people will, I will occasionally do some Q&As and then people will ask some personal questions. And I've talked about this many times. When I first started doing Hyrox, I learned very quickly, I think just by having a really positive growth mindset, when I
Hmm.
kind of started to evaluate the people I was surrounded by. Um, you, when people start growing, oftentimes their friends or other people in their life, they don't like that. And there's a reason. It's you're kind of holding a mirror, and usually it's the reflection of themselves that they're not liking. But they also like the person you were. That's who they know. And when you start to change as a person, that makes people uncomfortable.
Hmm.
Especially people that are maybe a little more complacent in life and they're just like fine, you know, being I don't want to say mediocre, but like they don't have big goals. They're not really trying to achieve anything. They're just kind of like floating through life. And I've always been a really big goal oriented person. So when I started hearing some of the things my friends were saying about my goals with my journey when I first started, I started to realize that I needed to really evaluate who was in my circle and who I was spending time with. Because, like I said, my time was becoming even more limited. Now I have even less time for social engagement. And so for me, if I'm taking the time to do that away from my daughter, away from training, things that time that I'm not implementing towards chasing my goal, this is very valuable time for me. And I want it to be spent on people that deserve it, not people that are sitting here and telling me, don't forget you're a mom. Don't forget you can't travel and do everything. Don't forget you need balance in life. Don't forget, or kind of being negative about what I'm trying to do.
Sure.
And it was, I just started to remove myself. Um, I don't think everything is deserving of a full blown conversation. Sometimes that might be what you need personally. I just kind of learned that I needed to just slowly kind of remove myself from those situations and those environments. And so that's just what I honestly started doing. Um, and when it's been brought up to me, I've been very straight up and very honest about it. But yeah, it's looking around, and you are what you consume. This
Hmm.
is something I'm really big on. And so my boyfriend and I both, we really limit our time with social media. When we are around people, we have, we'll go home and it's kind of like, I don't really like the way that this person thinks. And, that's fine. There is a level of, you have to accept people for who they are, of course, right? We all want to be accepted for who we are. But there is also an energy thing. And if people are bringing negative energy to you constantly, and it's a regular thing and it's a consistent thing, then that's when you need to maybe reevaluate that particular relationship. And I know that that is not easy. And it can be family, and setting boundaries, in my opinion, is one of the highest levels of self-respect that you can have for yourself,
Sure.
and following through on those. So that's something I've just become much, much better about in my time the last 2 years. Not everybody wants to see you succeed. And there's a lot of people kind of waiting to watch you stumble, and identifying that and those people has been really important for me.
And it kind of feels like when you do succeed, it's the same crowd that comes out and goes, "We knew she always had it."
Yeah,
And
that's a very true quote.
and I think
It's a
I
very
think
true
I
quote.
think I think what's hard is when you have a big vision on your life, whatever it may be. Training for me, my heart is encouragement. If you
Yeah.
would have asked me a decade or 12 years ago, do you ever think you'd be podcasting and interviewing a Meg Jacoby or this person or that person? I would have said, no, like what's a podcast? To
Yeah.
now, like even in my world, it's not that people are being mean or negative. I've realized that as I've grown and matured, I really struggle with that's not how I would have responded. Or
Yeah.
I'm so interested in other people and championing them. And so you'll find me at a dinner date or a party or whatever. I'll go up to every person and be like, "Hey man, what are you working on?" And as people talk, I'm like, "That's awesome. Like, did you also?" And it's not like
Yeah.
it's a mini podcast. That's just the way that I am. So then I stand there, and not that I want to like regurgitate all the things that I'm doing, but you're like waiting for them to be like, "Steve, what are you doing
Yeah.
these days?" And you're just like, okay, so there's no questions coming back at me. Okay, well, I'll just go so into another person.
Yep.
And it can feel very lonely at the top when one, you might feel like, is anyone even paying attention to what I'm doing? And sometimes I have more connections now with people I've never met than even people I grew up with or family
Mm-hmm.
members that are like, "Are you still doing the podcasting thing?" And it's like, yeah, it's not a thing. Like this is
Yeah.
actually my heart, and there's some pretty cool people on, and sometimes I schedule people and I wait patiently to make sure that it's actually going to be recorded because I want to scream from the mountaintop like this was freaking amazing. I got to sit with so and so musicians that I've always listened to that
Yeah.
give me space and time and sign on. But I think what's been, hard for me in my journey is you have a situation that isn't going right. In your heart's disposition would be to respond in one way, and somebody doesn't show you that grace or extend it towards you. I wouldn't say that I have a unhealthy people pleasing, but I care what people think about. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think it's hard sometimes when you're trying to build something like you are, and there's people that, whether they're overtly sabotaging what you're doing or behind the scenes they're whispering. I think there is a balance though, and I'm curious as to what your experience has been. This idea of boundaries. I talked about this actually with
Mm-hmm.
my buddy Peter in one of my first few episodes because he does a lot of counseling. I think boundaries is kind of one of those things that can be really misused that seems healthy on the surface to the point that
Yeah.
I've seen that people will say, I set up boundaries against people that aren't serving the purpose in my life. And I think that there's time and space for that. But I also think that there's times that when people don't know that you're setting up a boundary, having a conversation with them and giving them the space to understand what's important to you. So if you have well-meaning family members that say like,
Yeah.
"Meg, you should be focused on being a mom and don't forget to have life balance." I think it's because people genuinely care. But if you hear that and immediately go in your heart and say, "I have a boundary, I'm not going to talk to them anymore," and they don't understand that, then you're not giving people the atmosphere or the space to say like, "I'm so sorry, I didn't realize that that bothered you." And if they really are
Right.
for you, they'll work on it. And so has there been in your journey people that as you've maybe set up a boundary but it led to a healthy conversation, like it actually made a conversation strong, a relationship stronger? Or has it just every boundary has kind of led to a separation?
No, definitely. I think learning that not everyone is also going to understand what I'm doing, and even the sport. Like a lot of people don't know what my sport even is. So sometimes it can seem confusing to people on the outside who don't really grasp, what how big it actually is.
Sure.
Especially. And I remember it's 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 interesting because I think my family um, has always been huge supporters of me with my journey and my athletic journey. And I think without family or parent support in that at an early age, you wouldn't get to this level. I think that's a huge component of it. But even like getting them to fully understand, okay, well, I have to travel because I have to go do this, and there's a lot of when you're in, especially in amateur sports, there's a lot of influencer type duties that you have. I have to post X times per month for each sponsor. I have to show up to, I have in-person appearances. I have photo shoots sometimes depending on what the brand is. Um, and so they don't really always understand that like me being at an event in racing, that's part of my job. But the other part of my job is also being there and being in the community and being physically present and visibly present. And I have this interview and I have this meeting and I have all of these things contribute to the business side of the sport. And my vision for myself in the business side will continue for many years. I have so many things I want to do aside from competing, but that competing has helped open doors for. And getting everyone else around you to kind of understand
Yeah.
that was really hard at first. And they were like, why is this guy following you around all day? And you're trying to make like a YouTube video or a whatever. And especially in the 607, that is very unheard of. There's no influencers here doing, so I'm like the only person kind of doing this. But at the same time, someone not understanding is different from someone being negative about it, right? Not full comprehension doesn't mean they're not supportive. So understanding the difference between those two things has been very big for me, because I don't need you to necessarily understand what I'm doing. I just need you to be like, hey, that's great. Keep going, whatever that means, right? I think for people, you need to realize if it's a pattern or not. And that was one thing that I had kind of realized with some people in my life that I have inevitably cut out, was there was a pattern of behavior over a long period of time. You know what I mean? Not like a week or a month. It was like a full year that I gave people opportunities to kind of show if, I didn't just cut people out of nowhere. But when it becomes repeated offenses and the way I feel when I'm around these people or when I leave after being around these people is negative, that's when I have to start kind of thinking about what is this relationship doing for me in my life? If I'm always feeling bad around these people, or I don't like who I am when I'm with them, or the way that they speak to me or about me, like then that's when you have to really evaluate. Um, and it's hard. It feels like a loss. And that's one thing I would say that I've learned is not everybody is supposed to be on the journey with you forever. When you're
Bingo.
on a train, there's a lot of stops. And sometimes it's someone's stop to get off the train. And that's hard because it can feel like loss, but not everybody is meant to be on the journey with you forever. And so I've accepted that as well. Like this is just their time to be, this is their stop. It's time to get off. And that's okay, you know. And that's helped me a lot too.
Yeah, and I don't even get the sense that it's malicious. And, I think sometimes as you reminisce and you think back on your life, friends that were there for a season of life, that is okay. And so maybe just to give, a little bit of insight to a listener who's thinking about people right now, if you closed your eyes and thought about the people in your life that maybe aren't quite the relationships, or are the relationships you need to reignite because they made you feel good at one time, how do you begin to resurrect those and handle those? And, I think you probably have this crazy adrenaline feel good when you win these competitions on a world stage. what can take away from that is sometimes the people closest to us, that when
Mm-hmm.
you're not on the stage and they talk to you, it's like you can be crazy successful, and there are just certain people in your life that their voice is very loud for some reason,
Yes.
and it's diminishing. And even though you are a world champ, it could be, I'm not saying it's your mom or a close friend, but when they speak, it's almost like, what? Like, why do you make me feel this way? And not that
Yeah.
it erases all of the success. And so, I know we have just a few minutes here, and you've been super helpful. And as I told you coming onto the show, I think you'll be continuing to do plenty of podcasts talking about Hyrox and fitness. But I wanted to also give space to just talk about the things you don't always get to talk about. And so I think to cover the you know, total landscape of being a single mom, kudos to you for still chasing your dreams. I think also the fact that this happened after 30, how many people are out there that are feeling like they didn't quite hit the mark after college and they don't know what they're doing and they're just
Mm-hmm.
kind of existing. Folks, life is far too short.
Way too
Life
short.
life comes and goes, and you have every opportunity with every day with breath in your lungs to rewrite your story. But what I think I've heard from
Yes,
you is you can't force what's coming down the road, but you can position yourself and
for
do the
sure.
things you need to do. And so I think you're an inspiration to so many. And if, Meg has inspired you, drop a comment on YouTube or on this, leave a review of this episode. And I'd love to share those comments with her. But, I hope to have you back, because one of my visions, and I want to talk to you about this too, is I'm developing what are called, these master classes. And I'd love to bring previous guests that have been on the show together for virtual workshops to continue the conversation. And I think doing one around health and fitness would be great with you, because not many people get access to an individual like you. And so
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
always I'm always thinking about, like, how can I do more? I don't want to just have a conversation with a super inspirational person and it's me to them, but how can I open the network to people that need hope and inspiration? And so many of us that are in the grind need some hope and inspiration. And, we may never be a Hyrox champion, but you've talked about relationships, you've talked about mindsets, you've talked about pushing yourself and, making sure that you are having the people around you that understand what's important to you. And, all of that is going to resonate with people. So I just appreciate you being on this One Big Thing podcast. We'll put information in the show notes in case anybody wants to follow your journey or get in touch with you. But thank you for being my guest. Thank you for being so
Thanks for having
transparent.
me.
And I just appreciate you being on the podcast with me.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to connect with locals, other locals.
Let's go. Let's go 607.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. What a great conversation with Meg Jacoby. How much fun was she? Um, Again, appreciate you guys stopping by the One Big Thing. I really want this show to become a platform that can inspire and encourage you. Obviously, we heard a lot through Meg, through her journey, that her life in this high rock space really didn't happen until she was in her 30s. Now, I'm not saying everybody out there should go out and quit their job and try to become a world athlete. That was Meg's story. I guess my question to you is, what is your story? What is it that's left that you still need to figure out in your life to pen the story that you were always meant to live? That could be very different for you as it is for me. I've used podcasting as an outlet to connect with people. Never would have thought I would have been doing this. But take some time, really think about the things that align your passions with your purpose. And if that is something like Hyrox or something different, or hey, folks, there's no shame in being a parent. If you're a mom or your dad, your kids are your greatest investment in your life. But I hope that this conversation inspired you. And I always say at the end here, I hope you will check out other guests of the One Big Thing, that you'll stay around, that you'll subscribe to the podcast, that you'll leave a review of this experience today with Meg. And if there are topics that are near and dear to your heart, or individuals like Meg, whatever space they're in, athletes, business owners, influencers that you want to hear from, get in contact with me. You can head over to www.nqrmedia.com/onebigthing. That's nqrmedia.com/onebigthing. That is my dedicated page. Send me a note, send me an email, say, Steve, I'd love to hear about XYZ, whatever it may be, in this person, in this topic, and I have zero shame. I'll reach out to them. But I appreciate all of you taking this journey with me on the One Big Thing. Again, I hope to help you move the ball forward, and thanks for being my guest.